Hello nerds and geeks, I'm the real Dill, and on this episode of Reimagined, we're covering Batman v Superman, continuing my take of the DC Cinematic Universe. Like the Man of Steel video, I want to maintain as many elements from the original film as possible. However, if there's an interest, I'm willing to do an addendum video, which covers a couple pitches of more drastic changes. The number one problem with BVS is that Superman's side of the story is less developed than Batman's. He has less to do and weaker choices to make, but much of this can be solved by adjusting his side of the plot. But there's an issue with the tone of the movie as well. Batman's POV kind of overshadows a lot of the story and plunges it down into a dark area early on in the movie without ever letting it really lift up. I think this largely works, however. This is also a Superman story as well, and Superman embodies hope, and specifically this Superman in Man of Steel chose to embody hope. We need to see this better represented in the tone of the movie, especially in the first half of the story. This kind of tonal juxtaposition between light versus dark first allows for a stronger separation between Batman's POV and Superman's POV, and then it allows for them to clash together as the movie goes on. Secondly, it follows through better on Man of Steel's ending for Superman's character. And thirdly, it creates a more realized arc for the Superman character and other characters as well. Tonally for the movie and emotionally for the character, Superman's going to start up really high in the sky, and then as the movie goes on, he's going to be beaten and dragged into the dirt until he ends up in that fist fight with Batman at the end. Lex and the media tear him down emotionally and spiritually so that Batman can tear him down physically. As they are, the opening scenes of the Wayne murders and then Bruce's perspective of the Black Zero event and then the finding of Kryptonite is a really good setup for Batman. If the entire movie was steeped in Batman's point of view, I think this would be a grand opening, but I think it's very important for Superman to have equal footing in this. So before these scenes, we're going to start with Superman appearing before the Senate committee to outstanding support from both the media and civilians. Now the committee here is going to be focused on what to do with the Kryptonian ship, the scout ship, as well as Kryptonian technology in general. Right away from the media coverage, we find out that it's been 18 months since Zod's attack on Earth and Superman's heroic actions to save Earth. We then cut inside as Superman advocates for his right to the last remnant of his culture. He's very persuasive. He's kicking the butts of all those opposing him. All the people arguing for the government of the United States or the government of the UN are honestly losing this battle against Superman verbally. This therefore makes him a serious threat to both the US government and to Lex Luthor. Now the audience understands why Lex had to take away Superman's voice via the media and then ultimately the Capitol bombing in order to get what he wants. At the end, it should feel like the committee is almost ready to vote in favor of Superman, but they decide to reconvene at a later date to decide this. Now we go back outside and we see that a small group of protesters who are actually against Superman, which then leads into Bruce Wayne viewing all this on monitors in the Batcave, and the tone shifts as we then get to see his two flashbacks, the original opening of Batman vs. Superman. Now we introduce a third POV, that is of Lois Lane. She's not as dark and gloomy as Batman, but she's not near as gleamingly optimistic as Superman. She's a realist chasing a story. She's not driven by optimistic hopes of the future, and she's not driven by dark trauma of her past. She just is following the truth and desires the truth. I also think it should be clear that Superman doesn't kill that general or seriously injure him, because I feel like that would be a bigger part of the story later on if he had done so, and I don't think it's necessary to do. However, those burnt bodies are now going to be a bigger part of the media question as to what exactly Superman did when he intervened in Africa. Also, those experimental bullets that are used there, they're going to be made of a kryptonite metal, likely stolen from the scout ship and then repurposed and tested to use against Superman to see if they're viable weapons against him. Of course they're not. And that brings us into the bullet investigation itself. Lois traces it back to a government program meant to deter metahuman threats, and specifically that of Superman. There are several companies contracted by the government to do these experiments and learn these things, LexCorp being the top one. This program has shadily, even illegally, stolen bits from the scout ship before bureaucracy, democracy has determined where these resources are going to be allocated. Their justification is that other foreign powers are already mining from the world engine that's in the Indian Ocean. And of course, old Jolly Rancher senator, who's publicly a part of the committee on Superman, is actually a big figure in this program now. These changes make the US government more complicit in Lex Luthor's wrongdoings, as well as further motivates why they won't actually speak out on the African incident, because they're actually culpable for a lot of the stuff that went on there. Also, the failure of the experimental final rounds gives Lex further leverage to lobby for kryptonite to be brought into the United States. All of this beefens up Lois Lane's investigation in this story, as well as interconnects a lot of elements in a really satisfying way. A bigger part of Lex's machinations now is diverting Superman's attention from defending himself and putting him onto Batman's case. Were Clark to focus on clearing up his actions in the African incident, as well as further advocate for control of the scout ship, things might not align properly for the Capitol bombing to be as effective as it was. And now Lex Luthor only gets access to the scout ship after the Capitol bombing, which I think is how the movie was originally shot and intended. Rolling back a bit, while Clark is doing his investigation into Batman, I want to see him specifically look into the Wayne murders. This could be used for Clark to really empathize with Bruce. I would like to see him even go and visit Crime Alley and think about his parents, Jor-El and Lara, how they died sacrificing for him to have a better life, as well as Jonathan, who prevented him from acting so that he could go on and be Superman. We hear from Clark,
"Most of the world doesn't share your opinion, Mr. Wayne."
And Perry later says,
"End of love affair with man in the sky? Question mark."
Both of these lines suggest that a majority of the people already like and support Superman, but now the opening scene and how the African incident affects his plea for the scout ship allows this dynamic to be seen by the audience. And so when the resolution comes around at the end and there's a giant funeral procession for Superman with a lot of support for him, it feels more natural that these people came out there instead of it feeling more like everybody hated Superman or most people didn't know what to think of Superman. We now understand that there was a good group of supporters for him, and here they are again. Batman and Lex Luthor are very well characterized and very well motivated in this movie, so I don't think I need to go over all that since this is about changes I want to make to the movie. However, there is one thing missing from Batman's arc and from his characterization, and that's that he doesn't have this crisis of faith, and that needs to be driven by his no-kill rule. Batman in this is building up to break that no-kill rule when he's planning to murder Superman, but I think it needs to be established that this will be the first time he's broken this rule, and he's hoping it'll be the only time he'll break this rule. Unfortunately, the Batmobile chase happens. Now, we're not going to have him mow through as many people as he did in the actual scene, but we're going to have him take out at least one vehicle, and this is because these mercenaries are very well trained, they're very well equipped, and they're going to put him in a kill or be killed situation. He's already decided he has to do everything he can to stop Superman, so he does it. And this really affects him. He starts lagging behind on the chase as they reach that curve, and then... But seeing Superman really makes Batman steel himself, and he goes through that conversation, the "tell me do you bleed?" But as he goes back to the Batcave, he's having this internal dialogue with himself where he doesn't feel right with what he just did. And we're going to move up the Alfred confrontation to occur now. And you think because of this that he'd fold to Alfred, "Oh, I was wrong, I shouldn't have done this, what was I thinking?" But it's almost like confrontation makes him double down on this. He puts his blinders up and he goes with his justification, he goes with his idea that the 1% doctrine is just, but then Alfred leaves and he's stuck with his thoughts again, and this is his low point. He's about to give up on his mission. The writer Chris Terrio called this movie a revenge tragedy, and it's very true of Batman's side of things, but there's one thing that Batman is missing as a protagonist in a revenge tragedy. He doesn't have a crisis of faith where he almost gives up his vengeance. There's also a very particular trope in revenge tragedies that are used to push the protagonist back into the conflict, and that's the use of a vengeful spirit. And so now we have a legitimate reason for the nightmare vision to occur at this point in time. Basically, Future Barry gives Bruce Wayne just the right proof that his 1% doctrine is correct and that he needs to take out Superman. And so Bruce Wayne comes back too. He sees that his tracker has landed at Lex Luthor's compound, and he goes there and he's vicious. His brutality is intensified. He's insane. He's an animal. He nearly murders everybody there. And that's because he really believes in his course of action now. He really believes in this cause. And he's dehumanized these criminals like he's dehumanized Superman because...
Criminals are like weeds, Alfred. Pull one up, another grows in its place.
As already covered, Superman's original goal in this story is to get control of the scout ship. And that's really to honor Jor-El's vision for Superman to help Earth accomplish wonders. And he's really righting the wrongs of this ghost. Now this starts out bright and hopeful as we're in this day in the life of Superman, this norm he's been in since the end of Man of Steel, before the movie crushes him and sours this goal into being more of an obligation than a desire. He gets tired of the complexity and the conflict of global politics and trying to abide and appease every single person that he's willing to just turn away and look to something simple, and there he finds the Batman's wrongdoings. Batman has become more violent, he's starting to torture people, and he's doling out this unusual punishment of branding. And this branding has had 2 people die in prison by stabbings, as if Batman marked them specifically for them to die there. But just before Clark is ready to bring Bruce in, he's called as Superman before the committee for a hearing. But just before Clark is ready to bring in Bruce Wayne as Batman, he's called as Superman back to the Capitol for that hearing where Lex finally takes his voice completely away with the Capitol bombing. The event is then presented by the media as a potential willful attack against the US government and humanity as a whole. So Clark retreats. He goes and sees Lois, and then he goes out into the mountains. Instead of finding the ghost of Jor-El, the guy he's been doing all this stuff for at the beginning, he finds Jonathan there instead. And he's reminded, sure, no good deed goes unpunished, but he's also reminded that, hey, you can't do things out of obligation. You need to start doing them because you desire to do them. Martha reminded Clark that he doesn't owe the world anything. Jonathan now reminds him that he doesn't owe Jonathan, he doesn't owe Jor-El anything. He owes it to himself to be the best man that he can be. To be Superman. I didn't think I'd say this before, but I don't want to do the this is my world, you're my world thing. I want to do something more akin to Mr. Smith versus Neo.
Why, Mr. Anderson? Why? Why do you persist?
Because I choose to.
Superman doesn't help the world out of obligation. He doesn't sacrifice himself because there's nobody else who can do this. Clark does it because this is the man that he chooses to be. Now about the infamous Martha moment. There could probably be a 30-minute video about all the things wrong with it, and a 30-minute video about what it gets right. But I think it all comes down to one flaw, and that's that Superman isn't really motivated to save Martha. Sure, there's a couple of things that you can grasp at, but there's nothing concrete, and I think we need concrete for this. Before the fight, Clark has to spell out, hey, my mom has been kidnapped, but we learn that Batman really can't hear him because of the helmet, and he's really not in the mood to hear him. Then at the end of the fight, he's been through that explosion, he's had his ear now exposed, he can hear Superman, but he's also said something that's really dismissed anything about Superman's parents. So Clark can't really appeal to, hey, my mom is in trouble, because Bruce doesn't care. So he has to really think about his empathy with Bruce, and he knows that this is going to hurt him. But he says,
You're letting him kill Martha.
and this is going to bring it back to his investigation on Batman and his investigation of Bruce Wayne. And what I want to see is he finds this original article on the Wayne murders that's from the Daily Planet, and in it he learns the final words of Thomas Wayne. He learns that Bruce Wayne heard these words, and it was Martha, Martha. So Clark saying save Martha is very intentional now. He knows it's going to hurt Bruce, but he has to say it. He has to say it not to save himself, but to save his mom. And he's also offering redemption to this broken man that's standing over him, this broken man that wants to murder him. And he's offering this peace. Then, of course, Lois Lane swoops in and takes the subjectivity out of all of it.
It's his mother's name. It's his mother's name.
The tone leading into this showed that Batman's POV has overtaken Superman's, but now Lois's rules the rest of the movie. Batman and Superman finally know what they need to do and can do it. Truth, accountability, and choosing to be your best self wins over. Batman's dehumanization of Superman, his inability to look at him as a person, is a huge part of the conflict in this story. To get a glimpse of this early on, I'm thinking of the scene where Bruce is looking at the monitors that has Superman in action, and then Alfred walks in.
New rules.
What if just before this we get to see Batman boot up the computer and Alfred has preemptively set a article to be seen by Batman on one of the monitors, and it's a origin of Superman. But Bruce of course scoffs, closes it out, and goes back to looking at Superman as a threat. Now this would add audience experience context to when Bruce later says,
Considering every time your hero saves a cat out of a tree, you read a puff piece editorial.
and when Alfred claims.
But he is not our enemy.
On the email scene, don't show the Flash, Aquaman, and Cyborg. We need to keep this about Diana. I don't mind if we see those videos exist, but let's look at the World War I photo. Who are you? Where have you been? I think that focus sets up her call to action later on better. There is this deleted scene where Superman flies around the city trying to listen for Martha, and he has to constantly overlook all these cries out for help. And I think that would be a really powerful moment to bring back in here, especially since it not only calls back to that scripted line that Lex has the African actress read.
Him, how he decides
which lives count and which ones do not.
But it also adds to and justifies this other line.
No one stays good in this world.
Remember when Batman decided that he was going to shoot up Doomsday so that he would follow him before he got the spear that he's going to go get, and he nearly dies because of that? Yeah, that was pretty dumb, wasn't it? I get wanting to have Doomsday follow Batman and stop him from getting the kryptonite spear so that Lois can get it. I don't mind that, but what it should have been is Doomsday sees the Batwing fly across as Bruce Wayne is making this decision, and he instinctively follows him. Because he's already been attacked by these flying vehicles before, it makes sense for him to do so now. And last thing, I want to limit the drama of Lois nearly drowning when she gets the spear. Let her actually get all the way back to the surface, but she can't climb out of it because the rubble is too unstable. And that's why Superman swoops back in to pull her out. That's all I've got. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to comment below or visit mcmdebates.com if you have any feedback or insights about this topic. Let me know what things you would have changed, or if you would have preferred a completely different movie to what Batman vs. Superman is, and what that movie might be. I'm the real Dill. Goodbye.